Nyanje chembon zorda nyingme jang zonen monam chembon ngabya takar tarngam samdo shirma dokstomba tije chanla ki sham tsar ne chen ruwar tsering jangam zon jawar tije shirno yela Jigme Phuntsok la soran de gon de toban por shinji lo chunde hai der tsu jigso topchi topchi to la wam jur der ba chi zamba yi jiang zhip zhip zhong nen zhen kur ku jiang chi jia li do ji di qiu lo shang qiu lam de ge ron zo de dar qiu song dan ye chi nyang ge zhong ring zhi ka xin mang bu ji ji de za mo la jiu nyang di nyang ge dam zhong zu de son de ti ji yan de ji xian nian de nan lam ji za de dam qiu nian sem yun den per wi zhong zhen ci zhen pan de xie wi de pan de xie wi de dang zhen gong ban pa ji ji bi yim zhen bi yim nan ge zhen de shang qi zhe ba la me de ma rong yod na ti qiu shi shu lu nam ji geng ge ka de ya ma ji de la zong xi nian ge zhong
Today we will discuss His Holiness's teachings, His Holiness's profound and sacred teachings. The treatise of these teachings is structured the same way as before. It is divided into 3 parts. The 3 parts are the beginning section, the middle section, and the end section. As for the beginning, it is divided into the title and the homage verse, so there are 2 sections in total. Regarding the title, it is specifically called Advice. This is an advice of His Holiness. If we name it using a metaphor, it is like the sweet nectar of the celestial beings. The nectar of the celestial beings can cure any illness in the world, can all be cured. With this precious teaching like celestial nectar, afflictions and diseases of greed, anger, and ignorance in our human world can all be cured. By relying on such teachings through consistent practice, one can attain happiness both in this world and beyond. Therefore, this precious teaching of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, it seems that when we previously gave teachings of UC series, we shared it with everyone in the form of prose, in accessible prose format. This time it is also presented in the form of verses. Originally, His Holiness also used the form of verses. Let me briefly introduce it to everyone about the literal meaning. The first part, which explains the meaning of the title, has been finished. The second part, homage verse, goes like this. Child of the Tathagata, the master and possessor of the 10 great powers, I always remembers the one who completely eradicates the very root and source of samsara. My refuge, the Vajra Lord of the Rainbow Body, may you turn the mind of sentient beings toward the path of enlightenment. This is a verse of homage to Mipham Rinpoche, isn't it? So, what kind of person is Mipham Rinpoche? In fact, he possesses the 10 powers in full. Bodhisattvas only have a resemblance of them. Only Buddhas truly possess the 10 kinds of powers. Everyone should be well acquainted with what the 10 powers are indeed. A child of the Tathagata like this, whoever remembers him, can eradicate all sources of samsara. My sole refuge, the Vajra of the Rainbow Body. Vajra of the Rainbow Body is another name for Mipham Rinpoche. Mipham Rinpoche is occasionally called Mipham Jamyang Dorje. Mipham Vajra of the Rainbow Body, Mipham who surpasses all directions. Mipham has many different names, including various titles. That is to say, my refuge, the Vajra of the Rainbow Body, you turn the minds and thoughts of these intelligent, sentient beings toward the path of enlightenment. On one hand, His Holiness prays to Mipham Rinpoche. Now, Mipham Rinpoche is just like Bodhisattva Manjushri. Remembering him can eradicate samsara and can bless the mind stream of disciples. Therefore, His Holiness's prayers for us like this. I believe that everyone who hears this treatise will definitely receive the blessings of Mipham Rinpoche Manjushri and the inseparable blessings of His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel. This is something that is certain to be obtained. So, those who hear these teachings, in the future, their ways of practicing will indeed be different. Therefore, I feel that sometimes we really need to pray to the Guru, to Mipham Rinpoche, with devotion. Everyone also knows that many of His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel's teachings, at the very beginning, his heartfelt homage verses were often dedicated to Mipham Rinpoche. All of us who are present here today have also studied many of Mipham Rinpoche's precious teachings. As for myself, I also have a great deal of confidence personally when I am translating his teachings. Therefore, the first point here is, as we have mentioned in the precious verse, it is through praying to Mipham Rinpoche that we receive blessings in our mind stream. Our minds are originally inclined towards samsara by nature, but with the blessings of the gurus, our minds can quickly turn toward the great path of enlightenment, swiftly and earnestly turn toward the supreme great path of ultimate enlightenment. This is the second point. Next should be the third, right? This should be the vow or supplication verse, I think, perhaps. The initial meaning is divided into three distinct and separate parts, as I understand it. Sincere friends, please listen attentively. What use is empty talk spoken with conviction? This collection of profound and subtle teachings, refined words of advice, should be engraved in your heart. His Holiness speaks in a calling manner, addressing sincere friends, genuine companions of the heart, and true disciples, especially those disciples who have great faith. He asks you all to listen well, as for words that sound impressive, or those that are spoken eloquently. Such eloquent but empty talk is ultimately meaningless. Some people speak very beautifully with words flowing like a river, endlessly talking about everything. But in reality, they fail to grasp the main point, and there is no real substance to it. So no matter how much we say, how beautifully or how well we speak, it doesn't really have much significance. What truly matters most is to have a helpful and precious teaching. As for these teachings, His Holiness says, I have already gathered together the teachings spoken by the Buddha, especially these profound and vast, wondrous dharmas, and refined them into the purest essence, sincere advice, and key points. He offers everyone a particularly profound and thoughtful piece of advice for life. Each of you disciples should engrave in your hearts. This is truly rare and precious. Looking at what His Holiness is about to say, I see the content is little and quite similar to many previous teachings, with some overlap as well. But I think that some of us have never met His Holiness Rinpoche in person, while some have met him and even received his personal instructions at the time. I think if you had met him in person, perhaps his physical presence carried a unique blessing. His enlightened physical presence carried a profoundly unique and powerful blessing. But in terms of his teachings, apart from that, there is really nothing else. So we are actually very fortunate to be in the position we are in right now as well. Even though we haven't met him, most people probably haven't met him, because this year marks the important 20th anniversary of His Holiness's parinirvana by the end of this year. It is almost certain that many people have never had the opportunity to see him. In fact, receiving his teachings is just the same as before. Many of us, like the Venerable Jigme Lingpa, never met Longchenpa in person, but he finally received his emanation body, and after receiving his teachings, he attained realization. It's the same. I believe many people will also achieve this. Secondly, let's talk about the overall structure of the middle part. The structure of the middle part is divided into a brief explanation and an extensive explanation. Now, this brief explanation is also divided into the practice of the four important dharmas and the four summary of the main points. It is divided into two aspects. The brief explanation is divided into two aspects. First, the four important dharmas, relying on a qualified spiritual teacher as the root of the path, listening to and contemplating the sublime dharma increases merit and virtue. Pure discipline is a treasury of countless benefits and happiness, and practicing meditation gives birth to the Four Noble Mothers. The teaching we are discussing today focuses on these four sections. What will be discussed below are the four important dharmas. Which are these four important dharmas? The first is relying on a qualified spiritual teacher. This is the foundation of all Mahayana and Hinayana paths. Without a qualified teacher, it is indeed impossible to perfect the path of practice. The second is listening and contemplation, listening to and contemplating the authentic Dharma, the sublime teachings. When listening to and contemplating the sublime Dharma increases, all worldly and transcendental virtues are in this way enhanced. The third is pure discipline. Pure discipline, in its essence, is truly the source of all benefit and happiness, a treasury filled with benefit and happiness. The fourth is our practice of meditation. Through practicing meditation, the Four Noble Mothers are born. That is to say, what we call the Mother Prajna Paramita, as mentioned in the very first line of the Ornament of Clear Realization, is just the same as what is explained there. The Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas These four noble beings all arise by relying on the profound mother of emptiness. Through the consistent practice of meditation and by deeply realizing emptiness, one attains one of the four types of noble beings. These four can be considered a brief summary. This is at the very beginning of this treatise. If someone asks you what is taught in the Advice Like Celestial Nectar by His Holiness, it talks about relying on a qualified teacher, listening and contemplating, as well as maintaining pure discipline and practicing. In fact, listening, contemplation, practice, and pure discipline are basically the same as the teachings from yesterday. The only addition at the beginning is relying on a qualified and experienced teacher. Where did we get to in the Tibetan recitation just now? The next part is, the second is the practice of the summary of the four main points. To attain enlightenment, these four main points are absolutely indispensable and sufficient. At all times, in all four types of conduct, never forget your spiritual friend, even for a moment. The reliance on a qualified teacher and so on, as mentioned above, these four main points, are in fact absolutely essential for the practice of enlightenment. If you have them, everything is complete. If you lack them, you gain nothing at all. So, as long as you wish to practice for enlightenment, rely on a qualified teacher, listen and contemplate, maintain pure discipline, and cultivate meditative concentration. These four principles are indispensable. Therefore, in all four postures, walking, standing, sitting, and lying down, at any moment we must never forget and should constantly reflect. Do I have reliance on a qualified teacher? Do I have pure discipline? Have I listened to and contemplated the Dharma? Am I practicing meditative concentration? We should repeatedly examine our own mind stream in this way. At all times, these are truly indispensable, without exception. Finally, His Holiness expresses a heartfelt sentiment. O spiritual friends, my dear friends, my heart companions, and my disciples, do you truly possess them indeed or not? Each of us should examine our own mind stream. Do you possess these four principles? If you have these four principles, there is hope to attain enlightenment. If you lack discipline, don't listen or contemplate. Do not practice and do not rely on a qualified teacher. If you lack these four principles, then it is indeed very difficult for you to enter the path to enlightenment, extremely difficult for you to truly enter the authentic path to enlightenment. I wonder if you have ever felt this way. We often come into contact with some people, and when we do, some of them lack a good spiritual teacher and have not listened or contemplated the teachings. They have neither pure discipline nor any practice at all. They say, I am a Buddhist, but actually lack all these things. Without a foundation, if you lack the basics, it is very difficult for the branches and leaves to flourish. So I think that for some individuals among us here, if you wish to spread the Dharma in the future, even if it is just what His Holiness teaches today, the Advice Like Celestial Nectar is considered a truly significant teaching in your life, a profoundly meaningful and transformative teaching. Some of us often go to meet a spiritual teacher asking, could you give me a pith instruction? Or would you bestow a teaching upon me? Actually, as I just mentioned, if you truly sit before His Holiness, He has spent His life teaching just these few Dharma teachings. Many Dharma friends here with us have relied on the teacher for years. His Holiness says relying on a qualified spiritual friend, keeping pure precepts, and practicing are all vital. It's just these few points. So you must absolutely never ever forget this. At all times you should carefully observe yourself and supervise yourself consistently with correct and appropriate awareness and mindfulness. If you lack these important qualities, your practice may, over time, gradually regress and decline. Therefore, this should be practiced at all times. We've finished the second point mentioned briefly just now. Next, we'll discuss the extensive explanation. The extensive explanation is divided into four parts. Relying on a virtuous teacher and listening to and contemplating the sublime Dharma, maintaining pure precepts and actual practice, these are the four aspects. They are divided into these four aspects. Earlier, in the brief explanation, we mentioned these 4 points. So they are divided into these 4. Among them, the first, relying on a virtuous teacher, is also divided into 2 parts. How to rely on the teacher and how to practice Guru Yoga, these are the 2 divisions. First, how do we rely on the teacher? How to rely on a virtuous teacher, cherishing them even more than your own heart and eyes. Follow their instructions in action and speech, praise them verbally, and serve them personally without stinginess, providing whatever they need. So here, how do we rely on a virtuous teacher? As everyone knows, as a guru, one should cherish them even more than one's own heart or eyes. In the process of relying on a virtuous teacher, of course, we have discussed this before as well, relying on a virtuous teacher, one should regard the guru as one's respected mother, father, or even as one's own trusted sibling. Especially in Vajrayana practice, treat them as you would your own heart, and treat them as you would your own eyes. What does this mean? As everyone knows, we must take care of our own eyes. Even if there is the slightest speck of dust, or even the tiniest thing, the first thing we do as a priority is protect them. And as for our own heart, everyone knows, we are particularly and especially concerned about it. Our heart is just like that, truly and sincerely. In the same way, the guru should be treated likewise. The parents usually call their children baby or heart treasure. As for the guru, in fact, not even the slightest harm should come to them. One must do everything for the guru, even to the point of being willing to give up anything of one's own. In this way, this is one method of relying on the guru. This should be done both in your heart and in your external actions. Then, in following the guru's instructions, whatever teachings the guru gives, whatever profound teachings and guidance the guru offers, one should follow them unconditionally. Just like at the end of our A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher, in the process of relying on a spiritual teacher, how should we treat them? How should we maintain pure perception? This should also be made clear. Also, one should often speak words of praise and not speak behind their back, saying things like, our Khenpo is such and such, or she seems to be, or perhaps our Khenpo is this or that, or this great Lama, that junior Lama, or Om Benza Satohung, he is such and such. Here in Tibetan area, people often talk about others' faults, even about the guru's faults. Om Benza Satohung, when he recites Om Benza Satohung, the next step is to prepare to slander. He says Om Benza Satohung, but this place is also very complicated. Om Benza Satohung. And certain people are also very troublesome, very annoying. Oh, I really don't like this person. He listens to the Dharma during the day, but at night he slanders others, saying, I don't like people like this. Actually, this creates a lot of negative karma. We should use our words to praise and our bodies to serve. At the same time, whatever possessions you have, you should offer them without any stinginess and provide everything that is needed to support him. This is how we rely on a spiritual teacher. If His Holiness were in front of you, when His Holiness asks everyone to rely on a spiritual teacher, this is how it should be done. It's not about listening to the Dharma today and then slandering tomorrow, or receiving the teachings today and then abandoning them afterwards. Some of us, after listening to the Dharma, seem to feel nothing at all, just like ordinary people. Even those ordinary people with a bit of self-cultivation probably wouldn't act like this. So for me personally, anyone from whom I've ever received teachings in the past, even if it was just a single guidance session, because the Dharma is very important and I deeply cherish it, I believe I should also respect that person. This is truly very important. Otherwise, we all just appear to be people, right? Even His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel, also appears to be just a great and noble person among people. If you are someone who does not value the Dharma, then everyone seems more or less the same to you. It's actually the same for us Khenpos and Khenmos as well, you know. Some are even shorter than you are. Some individuals may not look quite as dignified as you do, and some others may appear rather weak or fragile. The spiritual teachers whom we have relied on in the past are all like this. They really do look just like ordinary people. But in reality, what we have received is the Dharma, is the same in the mundane world as well. For teachers, all students, and in general the good students, are consistently respectful. This is very important, the way we rely on our teachers. The second point is that Guru Yoga is like this.
Shin de chir tar ten jana nyang da ma le labar chi zong te chak song ka drib ngap ka tor ngam ja li ji ker tam ko ga phang med bar nyam bar shu sam mo nyang chir da cham ne kan di bi shokh par lama gum tat mu che chang sor de bong je lang thig yi da yer me sta wi ngang la jo kang la to sum she wi yer te yam dor ngam ro jong jam so kang la yam sa par she na lo yi man ser jang de she tun ro lap chen chog ni zo ber nyamlen nyambo mang kolo tolo zamdo manjo bar chig brindik se te som metni ji khshad jong shen de yarwar dorm rong.
Now it talks about Guru Yoga being like this. The Guru, embodiment of all sources of refuge. By day, visualize him above your crown. By night, at your heart. Pray with sincere devotion to receive the four empowerments and rest your mind in non-dual awareness. Because the Guru is the source of all refuge, the embodiment of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. When we practice in our daily lives, visualize the Guru above your crown during the day, as Chetsun Nyingti taught, or in the words of my perfect teacher, we clearly visualize the Guru above our head. At night when we sleep, we visualize the Guru at our heart center. This is mentioned in many different scholarly commentaries and sources. Then we pray. During the day as well, we pray to receive the 4 empowerments. This includes the Guru's 4 places, or you could say 3 places, from which white, red, and blue lights appear, and then merge into our own 3 gates. We then attain the blessings of the Guru's body, speech, and mind. Finally, the Guru's 3 places simultaneously emit light, which then merges into our own heart. We thereby attain the fruition of the natural body. If we have the opportunity at some point in the future, when His Holiness was teaching in the West, the content and practices he taught were truly and absolutely exceptional. So when the time comes, I can also share these with everyone. In any case, regularly and consistently practicing Guru Yoga and sincerely praying to receive the 4 empowerments on the path, then abide in the realization where the Guru's mind and your own heart are truly inseparable. Rest in the view of non-duality, where there is no difference between the two. In the end, everything is the Guru's form, the Guru's voice, and the play of the Guru's wisdom. If you visualize everything as the Guru in this way, your own practice will steadily and gradually improve, and your realization will continue to keep increasing over time. If you don't pray over the long term, if you don't practice consistently, it really is a bit. I see that some of us often go out on our own and still manage to practice by ourselves. Some people have studied for many years, but haven't really practiced much at all. It seems like they're no different from those who don't study Buddhism at all. They just glance at a book every once in a while, but aside from that, they don't do any practice in their daily work, nor do they meditate, nor do they have any interest in this aspect, any genuine interest whatsoever. So Buddhists really are quite different from one another. As the saying goes, the 5 fingers are all of different lengths, as it is often said. Indeed, many practitioners also rely on various spiritual teachers, and similarly enter the monastery to study. But later, some practice Guru Yoga, pray to their Guru, and during visualization practice as well, they visualize the Guru, their revered spiritual teacher, above their head during the day, and at their heart at night, gently falling asleep within the clear light dream state. There are many such cases. However, some of us may indeed lack these practices. It isn't very good, right? So that was about Guru Yoga just now. The first point has already been explained briefly, quite briefly. Second, listening to and thoughtfully contemplating the authentic Dharma is also divided into 2 aspects. One aspect is extensive listening and contemplation, hearing and thinking. The other aspect is practicing without any doubt whatsoever. When practicing, there is certainly no doubt at all. So the second section was divided into these 2 parts just now. First, at the initial point, the objects to be listened to and contemplated, before whom are the vast ocean of teachings, both exoteric and esoteric. By studying them, one can dispel the darkness of the mind, accomplish the meanings of this and afterlife, and perfect the 2 accumulations for the realization. Here the word whom should refer to the Guru. One should listen and contemplate well in front of the Guru. So, what are the main and essential subjects of listening and contemplation? They are the teachings of the exoteric and esoteric vehicles, the 5 major sciences, the 5 minor sciences, and the fields of knowledge. These exoteric and esoteric teachings are as vast as an ocean. They are especially broad and boundless, as immense as a sea of clouds. What effect does studying these have? It can really help to dispel the darkness of the mind, the ignorance and confusion. By studying the exoteric and esoteric teachings, and by learning this worldly knowledge, indeed in everyone's heart, the darkness, ignorance, and suffering that have existed since beginningless time, all of these will be dispelled. Once these are dispelled, one accomplishes the great purpose of this life and future lives. And in the long run, as you can see, one perfects the accumulations of wisdom and merit. Therefore, every day we should diligently listen to and deeply contemplate the teachings. As His Holiness said, every day we should carefully listen to and thoughtfully contemplate the teachings that we personally need in our lives. Here it is clearly said, that we should listen to and contemplate the exoteric and esoteric teachings and doctrines every day. In this way, the obstacles in our hearts are dispelled. Some of us may do relatively well while we are at Larungar, but once we go out, we become distracted. We no longer have the demeanor of a practitioner, especially now in the information age. If you start playing with your phone, you might just simply watch short videos, and really several hours will be gone. At that point, there's no time left for reciting mantras, no time for meditation, and all the important practices are gone. It's truly pitiful. So in the past, many of our Dharma friends who were very diligent, dedicated, and truly committed to their practice now, it seems that many of them often spend their time in an idle manner on their phones. It's truly pitiful. Therefore, every day we should listen to and carefully contemplate both the exoteric and esoteric teachings, and the broader the range, the better. Especially now, during the Sakya month, nowadays in Tibetan area and many places abroad, people say that this month is a vegetarian month, a month when one should eat vegetarian, should strictly observe vegetarian diet. We also encourage everyone, whether in Han regions or in other areas, to treat this month in the Tibetan calendar, as the birth month of Shakyamuni Buddha, as well as the time of his enlightenment and parinirvana, a period that encompasses 4 extremely auspicious festivals. So today, I also took the opportunity to speak to the community of nuns about this. Roughly since the year 2019, we have been actively encouraging everyone in our community to eat a vegetarian diet. Of course, I personally think that in Chinese Han Buddhism, from the time of Emperor Liangwu up to now, there has been an especially good and excellent tradition. Therefore, most people will definitely uphold this practice. Eating vegetarian should not be a major issue. But even now, we still encourage everyone. We still strongly encourage and urge everyone here today to remember Shakyamuni Buddha. If we recollect Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha is the Lord of Great Compassion. Since he is the Lord of Great Compassion, we must act in a way that is harmless, thoughtful, and compassionate. We must remember him by engaging in conduct that does not harm sentient beings. This is the best way. So in this regard, the entire Larungar is filled with vegetarian restaurants. Everyone knows this already. There's hot pot in this place and in that place too. Now, all over Larungar, there are hot pot places. Vegetarian hot pot. I don't know whether you enjoy the hot pot or not. Some people eat this hot pot today, when that hot pot tomorrow. Eating hot pot continuously throughout the week. Now, eating hot pot has already become almost like an addiction for some of them. This isn't very good either. If you can't control any kind of pleasure in the end, that's not good either. It's fine to occasionally have hot pot, but if you eat hot pot every day, in the end, that's not necessarily a good thing either. Some people are already used to it. If they have some money, they go every day. That's not very good either. Some people are always treating this person or that person every day. That's not good either. It's okay to relax sometimes, whether it's having hot pot at Larungar or eating something else, that's fine too. I think it's not difficult for us here. After all the restaurants here are vegetarian. This is also, in an indirect way, very meaningful. I won't go into other reasons. If I elaborated further on all the other important reasons, I already talked about it this morning and again now. Here, our main point is that listening and contemplation are very important. Especially, you must diligently practice the essential instructions of the profound teachings. Do not let your understanding remain superficial from just listening. When living alone, you will certainly gain certainty. Study and reflect repeatedly, and do not abandon this. Here, being well-read and knowledgeable is also very good. But what is the most fundamental thing, especially? You must choose for yourself the most truly essential and invaluable treasure of pith instructions, such as the great perfection, bodhicitta, or the view of emptiness. Among all the teachings of Buddhism, you need to find instructions that suit you. I mentioned this before. Among all these Dharma texts, for example, you can pick something such as the Dharmadhatu Treasury, Yeshe Lama, the great perfection of Manjushri, or the way of the Bodhisattva. You should devote your whole life to practicing it well. 1 or 2 Dharma texts. This is very important. So, as His Holiness said, among this vast ocean of teachings, you need to choose one teaching for yourself. Don't just leave it on a superficial level. It's not enough to just hear it and think that's sufficient. Thinking, I know this, I've heard it many times. I know this, I've heard it too. I've studied it, I've looked into it. If you just leave it on the surface like this, it doesn't mean much. This kind of superficial knowledge may not necessarily be able to transform your mind stream. So what level do you need to reach? When you are living alone in a cave, when you are living alone in the woods, in the forest, when you are in solitary retreat, you must be able to reach a state where you have no doubts at all. Some people don't study and contemplate properly when listening to the teachings. When they practice alone, they can't recite the liturgy, can't visualize the deity, and lack theoretical knowledge. At that point, a whole host of doubts and wrong views will arise. What retreat or practice can you do? It's impossible. So when you hear teachings, find the key point, the pith instruction. This key point should help you stay far away from all doubts. When you practice alone, you won't face obstacles. You must try your best to reach this kind of state. You need to repeatedly study, carefully analyze, and thoroughly discuss, and so on. Make sure to reflect on each step. And you must habituate yourself again and again to the practice, repeatedly practicing. Only then will you truly benefit from it. So you must repeatedly familiarize yourself with it, study it over and over, and never give up. When you practice alone, you must have confidence. You need to be confident in your practice. Only then is it truly good. So when it comes to listening and contemplating, it's not saying that we have to master all the sutras and treatises completely. That's not what is being said. But when you actually practice on your own later, at least you won't have doubts yourself. Basically, you will be able to practice independently. As we mentioned before on Weibo, when your parents are still alive, you should learn to take care of yourself in daily life. When your teacher is still alive, you should learn to be self-reliant in your practice. I've forgotten, even the things I wrote, I've forgotten now. Maybe I caught a cold today too. You all call it a cold, but I've never tested positive. Today, when I went to give a lecture to the nuns, when I went earlier this afternoon to give a lecture to them, all of them were wearing masks. I was the only one not wearing one. They were coughing quite a bit, but it didn't seem like a big deal. This is what I just mentioned about actual practice being without doubt. This is the second point regarding study and contemplation. The third point that we are discussing is about pure precepts. It is divided into two parts: the faults of abandoning the precepts and the merits of upholding them. The first is, if you lack the adornment of pure precepts, even if you possess noble birth and talent, as well as dignified appearance and so on, in reality, these are neither rare nor dignified nor beautiful, neither truly rare nor genuinely dignified nor authentically beautiful. Although you may appear to have talent, wealth, and everything else in life, it is only with the foundation of precepts that true fulfillment is possible. The precepts includes the meaning of lay precepts and monastic precepts, and also refers to basic moral precepts of character. If you lack these, no matter what else you have, even if you look extremely attractive and are extremely wealthy, if your family background is privileged, like being second generation rich or official, truly exceptional in every way, but if you lack the basic foundation of character in your own mind stream, actually, precepts are essentially the baseline for moral standards. If you don't even have this baseline, then no matter what, a person is really not beautiful. Even if you practice generosity and make offerings, then accumulate all kinds of merit and virtuous resources. In reality, it is of no real benefit. Your future will only lead toward the lower realms. Hell, hungry ghosts and animals are waiting ahead of you. So, just as it is clearly stated in the well-known Letter to a Friend, if a person indeed possesses wisdom and important pure precepts, then they are a very good practitioner, very dignified. But if one lacks precepts and wisdom, then outwardly, even if in the eyes of the world this person appears dignified and attractive, or this person is very wealthy, or this person is very eloquent, all of these are unnecessary qualities. Therefore, the most important quality is for a person to have a set of precepts to regulate themselves. The most essential and fundamental quality is to have precepts, to uphold precepts. These precepts are extremely important. Next, the second point, the merit of possessing precepts. Earlier, we discussed the faults of breaking precepts and the shortcomings of lacking precepts, meaning nothing is truly dignified once there are no precepts. But if one possesses precepts, even if one has no other virtues besides pure precepts, the gods and all beings will praise and scatter fresh flowers in your honor. Wealth will naturally gather without effort, and you will easily set foot on the path to enlightenment. If you possess pure precepts, then even if you lack other things, such as listening, contemplation, and practice or wisdom, or even worldly eloquence and wealth, even if you don't have all of these things, don't possess these, all gods and beings will still gently scatter auspicious flowers for you. You will be praised at all times. You will always be protected and blessed. The Dharma protectors will always help you, and even heavenly celestial beings will indeed praise you. Moreover, much of the wealth in the world, even if you do not actively or deliberately seek it out, will actually gather around you naturally. Wherever a person with pure precepts goes, wealth and resources will flow to them continuously and always. There will be no suffering. So sometimes in our practice and daily life for us, it is indeed on one hand due to the kindness of our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. We are truly fortunate to possess this kind of wonderful blessing. Perhaps many of you who are present here today, including some monastics, I truly think this way myself. The Buddha's kindness is immense. If it were not for this, people of our age would have to work so hard every day just for food and drink, doing labor jobs. It's really not that easy as it might seem. Now in Tibetan area, these days are Sakya month, which is also the month for digging cordyceps, and digging for cordyceps is very hard. I've never dug them myself, but seeing them on the mountaintops in the snowy mountains, searching all day long. If they're unlucky, they might not find a single one the whole day. It's very cold and they're hungry, their faces are all chapped from the wind. Honestly, what kind of income do they end up with? What income do they actually receive? Here we don't have to do anything at all. And it's not like we're particularly learned, nor are we especially remarkable in any particular way, but thanks to the Buddha's robes, wherever we stay, we have food and drink. Actually, this is even if we don't talk about the Buddha's great kindness in a broader sense, not to mention compassion or emptiness and all that, if you don't have to worry about food or clothing, that's truly quite rare in this day and age, honestly. I think I might have actually forgotten about this particular part in Journey to the West, when His Holiness first arrived in San Francisco, because we probably flew for over 10 hours on the way. A really long journey, first to Hawaii, then to San Francisco. They graciously invited us to a dining table at that time. It was also a private room, and there, when His Holiness started eating, he slowly began to shed tears. None of us really knew why His Holiness seemed to be silently reciting something. Then, after a brief pause, His Holiness said, "Ah, the Buddha's kindness is truly immense. In this unfamiliar place by the sea, people of different skin colors are serving us, and ultimately this is all because of the Buddha's kindness." At that time I thought to myself, this isn't really the Buddha's kindness. These are Buddhists, these are our own people here. Anyway, at the time I didn't think of it that way. But looking back now, I suppose that's really how it is. Many people, wherever they go, have food to eat and clothes to wear. We're not talking about anything else. But nowadays, a lot of people are very particular about food and clothing. Whether it's people working outside or those selling vegetables on the street, I often see some people on the street whose lives are especially difficult and challenging. For example, perhaps someone just selling a very simple ornament. How much can they really make from that? Those people run in street stalls. Sometimes I feel a lot of compassion for them, and I don't really have any use for decorative earrings myself, but I still buy a few from them. To them, it's still very important. That day, Khenpo Tsultrim Lodru and I were pleasantly having tea together in the afternoon, and a shoe shiner came by. He asked if we wanted our shoes shined, and Khenpo said yes. I said, "Your shoes are very clean. Do you really need them shined?" He said, "I already had them shined yesterday, but I'll have them shined again today." In the end, the shiner asked for an extra 20 yuan. Khenpo Tsultrim Lodru said, "That's fine." Indeed, sometimes when we look at it, his actions might perhaps seem a bit deceitful. But for him, it might actually be a significant advantage or benefit. So sometimes when we reflect, the Buddha's kindness is truly immense, especially for ourselves. If we have pure precepts, then just like it says in Opening the Door to Mind Training, as it is described there, the food of a practitioner will come naturally without having to work hard for it. And ultimately, one will easily set foot on the path to enlightenment. This is merit of precepts. Next, the fourth point. Formal practice is also divided into two aspects. One is gradual cultivation along the path, and the other is encouraging the practice of resting the mind. These are the two aspects. Gradual cultivation along the path and encouraging the practice of resting the mind. First, just as one cannot quench thirst without drinking water, one cannot attain liberation without practicing the true dharma. Practicing the four renunciations, taking refuge, generating bodhicitta generation and completion stage. As mentioned earlier, it's just like us ordinary people in the world. If we don't drink water, it's impossible to quench our thirst. In the same way, even if we understand the principles quite well, if you don't actually practice the true Dharma diligently, it's impossible to attain liberation. So one must sincerely and wholeheartedly practice the authentic teachings every day. Wasn't it also in The Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, the other day? It was also another exhortation to practice. So how should we practice? We definitely need to practice. What should we really practice? First, we cultivate the 4 thoughts that turn the mind, the rarity of human birth, impermanence of life, the sufferings of samsara and karma's infallibility, 4 renunciations. Then we take refuge. Next, we cultivate bodhicitta in the uncommon preliminaries, as well as vajrasattva, mandala offerings, and other preliminaries. After that, we practice the generation and completion stages of vajrayana. Then, the truly supreme and unsurpassed path known as Dzogchen. These are the fundamental principles and the important foundational stages of practice. I think everyone should understand this in theory. But as for how well we actually practice, each person will know for themselves. The second exhortation is to practice resting the mind, which I don't think was recited earlier. Where should we start? From pure discipline, right?
Jur ngin de deni devara shanchab lam de njo chuna maptong kumba masirjan magum chuti namjur matope lord dor namjir kyamjo semke tan ramni dzogchen lamchog gumbar sha tertir chirtir gumbi rambayan kumkin lami lagshid dirsi chap tagib chidi semyin ngarso le tamba bjender gilla jiberam zoda terkin mepi gevenro kanji joni ni pjar lame de shanchap to kyotang ani tserep ganda ya mabam jamsur jisen zanjir ji ji jilu karngur ngawno chun some perwa gelang per.
So how do we practice next? It's just these few practices that were just mentioned. I've talked section 2, exhortation to practice resting the mind. How should one practice the stages of the path? By relying on the omniscient master's nectar rain. The essence of the 9 vehicles is resting the mind. Constantly familiarize yourself with the well-explained meaning of the Dharma. So what is the sequence of the practices? It is the omniscient Longchen Rabjam, or Longchen Pa, the noble and revered one. His profound teachings are like a gentle rain of nectar, and his instructions are truly the nectar Dharma. What does this refer to? In fact, it is the quintessence of the 9 vehicles stages. That is to say, the verses of resting the mind in its nature and the Great Chariot commentary. We have talked about this before. It seems like it was the year when His Holiness passed away. Did we discuss it then? I'm not sure if we talked about it after that. I remember that once we covered the exoteric part, but we didn't go through the verses related to the esoteric part. I think that's how it happened back then at that time. Now, many newcomers may not have received it. Yesterday, the education department, which is in charge of the Lama's side, asked Khenpo Tsultrim Lodra to teach resting the mind in its nature. He said he wouldn't teach it now. He didn't agree. He said maybe he could teach the Great Chariot commentary on resting the mind in its nature next year. He didn't agree to it. On our side, we may have recited and discussed it before, this resting the mind in its nature. I've taught it several times in this life. In this text, His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel, explains how we should practice. That is, to practice by the content of the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, or the Great Chariot commentary on the finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind. The Great Chariot commentary has much material. If you have faith, and if no one is teaching it and you read it yourself, most of it should be clear if you have a foundation in Buddhism. The essence of practicing the 9 vehicles is the teachings explained in Finding Comfort and Ease in the Nature of Mind. We should practice them over the long term and study them over the long term. What does His Holiness recommend to us? It is precisely the Finding Comfort and Ease in the Nature of Mind. In fact, there is actually a teaching from Patrul Rinpoche, which I translated at the time. In it, he also recommends the finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind. This is the stages of the path of Nyingma tradition. Everyone should take it seriously to study finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind. For example, if you meet His Holiness, what does His Holiness tell you? He recommends that you read Finding Comfort and Ease in the Nature of Mind. Some of us are well versed in finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind. I think among the Khenpos and Khenmos, some have also taught it many times. Our Vajrayana class also taught finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind. So in the future, everyone, please remember to study it. I may not necessarily teach it again in this lifetime, given my current age, health, and all aspects. When His Holiness went to America, he often said, "This time is both my last and my first visit here." And later, it turned out exactly that way. Now, at this present moment, finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind is so extensive. So will there be another opportunity in this lifetime? There probably won't be, but you yourselves should learn it, since His Holiness has recommended it this way. You can practice it well on your own. As for the translation, it has already been done. So everyone should practice. This should conclude the entire treatise. Next is the final section on the division of concluding verse, dedication of merit, and the postscript to the treatise. These are divided into two parts. For the dedication of merit, may the virtue here help all beings be free from the two obscurations and reach enlightenment. May you and I, in every life, be guided by Mipham Rinpoche. At that time, His Holiness said, "All the Dharma I have taught today above, I dedicate all these roots of virtue to all sentient beings, so that all sentient beings may be free from the obscurations of afflictions and cognition, and attain the fruit of unsurpassed perfect enlightenment." Then as for the one making the request, may you and I in all our lifetimes receive the blessings and embracing of Mipham Rinpoche. As for the final postscript, it was written by Lama Tselo. Lama Tselo was here when we first arrived. He was already present at Larungar when we first arrived initially, when we came to this sacred place for the very first time. Later, I don't know exactly when, he passed away. Anyway, when we first came, he lived near the prayer wheel where Lama Muntso is now. That area near the prayer wheel, at that time his clothing was quite, how should I say, kind of like a yogi's attire. It wasn't very clean, that sort of look. Back then among the nuns, when the community of nuns was just starting to form, there was always a relatively young nun in his family. There was always one particular relatively young nun living in his household. As for Lama Tseluo, we would often see him around. He was from the same hometown as His Holiness here in Sertar. He was the one who made the request at that time. Actually, sometimes when we look at Tibetan Buddhism, there are some attendants around certain masters who often request them to compose treatises. Nowadays, some disciples sometimes invite them to have a meal together. They'll ask, "Could you have a meal with us?" and then recommend some weight loss pills to him. Or something like that, you know. It seems like there are actually little of such things related to the Dharma, in fact. But when it comes to requests about the Dharma, it doesn't necessarily mean a treatise will be written. For example, here, if someone asked me to do a translation, I might not necessarily agree. Because sometimes I simply can't, there's just no time. But in some cases, including with some eminent monks and great masters, there are also requests for translation like this. So it's not that we absolutely have to make such requests. But as for Tibetan area, we also know that many disciples around Mipham Rinpoche would request him to give commentary on certain texts. I myself have also made several such requests to Khenpo Derpa, such as the commentary on finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind and the treasury of pith instructions. I remember there were 4 treatises that I requested. Sometimes making such requests is also necessary while the teacher is still alive. For example, at that time, Lama Tseluo requested His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel, to give him a teaching. His Holiness then composed the preliminary instructions. Ngawang Lodritsung me compose, increasing auspiciousness. This was translated quite early this morning. I only got back home very late last night. But as for what I want to talk about today, honestly, I really don't know. It seems that there used to be a prose version of this. But this time, let me offer it to everyone in the form of verses. We can also consider ourselves to have received the blessings of His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel. In the past, His Holiness, who is also known as the wish-fulfilling jewel, also taught this important teaching. There was also a transmission of this profound teaching. So, I am now offering this precious Dharma offering to everyone here. Let's dedicate with the quintessence of oceanic prayers of aspiration.
Om Bandara Bandma Sodargye